The Tuesday Visitor. Tuesday mornings at Happy Tales often began with a quiet hum, a gentle rhythm broken only by the occasional bark or the clatter of food bowls. Mrs. Eliza Finch contributed to this hushed atmosphere with her own serene arrival. She would push open the heavy glass door, a faint jingle of bells announcing her presence, and offer a small, almost imperceptible nod to whoever was at the front desk. Her worn canvas bag, carried with a familiar grip, contained nothing more than a small bottle of water and a well-loved paperback. Her pilgrimage through the kennels was a study in gentle observation. She moved with a slow, deliberate pace, her sensible shoes making hardly a sound on the concrete floor. To each wagging tail and hopeful whimper, she offered a soft, almost inaudible murmur. "Hello, sweet one," she might whisper to a bouncy terrier, or, "You're a handsome fellow," to a majestic German shepherd. Her gaze, warm and unhurried, lingered just long enough to acknowledge each canine inhabitant without stirring them into a frenzy. Her journey invariably concluded at Run 12. There, Barnaby, an old beagle with a perpetually mournful expression and a coat the color of dried leaves, would be waiting. He never barked when she approached, nor did he leap against the wire mesh. Instead, he would rise slowly from his worn bed, his tail giving a single tentative thump against the floor. As she knelt, her fingers gently tracing patterns on the cold metal gate, Barnaby would lean into her touch, his big, soft eyes fixed on her. A low, contented sigh would escape him, a sound of profound recognition. The staff, busy with their morning chores, had come to anticipate this ritual. From the corner of his eye, Mark, the kennel manager, would watch Mrs. Eliza, a faint smile playing on his lips. The Tuesday Visitor, he'd sometimes think, acknowledging her consistent, unspoken devotion. She never asked for special treatment, never made demands, simply shared her quiet presence, a comforting anchor in Barnaby's long, waiting days. Barnaby's best friend. Barnaby, a beagle with ears the color of autumn leaves, had been a fixture at Happy Tales for what felt like an eternity. 14 months had etched a certain weary resignation onto his gentle face. He spent his days in Run 12, a creature of quiet habit, pacing with an almost meditative slowness. Most visitors received a polite sniff, a tentative tail wag, but nothing more. Then there was Mrs. Eliza. Every Tuesday, without fail, Mrs. Eliza would arrive, her steps unhurried, her presence a soft whisper in the usually bustling shelter. Barnaby's calm facade would shatter the moment he recognized her scent, even before she reached his run. A low, rumbling whine would escape him, his tail thumping a frantic rhythm against the concrete floor. He'd push his nose through the cold metal bars, his brown eyes, usually clouded with a distant sadness, alight with an almost youthful exuberance. Mrs. Eliza would kneel, her hands, delicate and lined, reaching through the gaps. She never spoke many words, their conversations a silent ballet of touch and knowing glances. She'd stroke his velvety ears, tracing the contours of his skull, and Barnaby would lean into her touch, a deep sigh escaping him. His chin would rest on her knee, his entire body relaxing into a puddle of contentment. For those precious minutes, the shelter faded away, and Barnaby was simply a dog loved, his long wait momentarily forgotten in the warmth of her quiet devotion. A missing face. The first Tuesday in October arrived with its usual drizzle, but Mrs. Eliza Finch did not. The shelter hummed with its routine. Dogs barked, volunteers cleaned, and the front desk rang with calls. When her familiar, serene presence failed to materialize by lunchtime, Sarah, sorting donation receipts, felt a flicker of surprise. "No Mrs. Eliza today?" she murmured to a passing colleague. "Guess not," came the reply, a casual shrug accompanying it. No one else seemed to notice, or if they did, they didn't voice it. The following Tuesday brought a crisp, clear autumn morning, but still, Mrs. Eliza remained absent. This time, the silence where her soft murmurs usually resonated felt more pronounced. The initial shrugs gave way to murmurs of gentle inquiry among the staff. "She's never missed 2 in a row," someone remarked over coffee. A ripple of vague concern began to spread, an unspoken question hanging in the air. Meanwhile, a more palpable distress was unfolding in Barnaby's run. The old beagle, usually content to watch the world from his blanket, had developed an unsettling new habit. He paced a slow, methodical circuit of his enclosure, his nose low to the ground. His once soulful eyes, usually filled with a quiet dignity, now held a deep, unreadable sadness. His tail, which had always offered a gentle wag for Mrs. Eliza, hung limp. Sarah, ever observant, couldn't ignore the change. During her afternoon rounds, she knelt by his run, offering a soothing hand through the wire. "What's wrong, Barnaby?" she whispered, her brow furrowed with worry. He merely sniffed her fingers, then resumed his restless journey, a silent, furry sentinel awaiting a missing face. His subtle shift spoke volumes, stirring a quiet determination within Sarah to understand the unspoken grief in his weary eyes. 6 weeks gone. The digital clock on the reception desk glowed 3:17 p.m. Sarah chewed on her lip, a familiar knot of unease tightening in her stomach. Tuesdays felt incomplete without her. With a determined sigh, she tapped the screen, pulling up the visitor log for the past few months. Her finger scrolled down past familiar names and scrawled signatures, searching. Eliza. Just Eliza. Sarah remembered the careful, almost elegant script. October 10th. October 3rd. September 26th. Her brow furrowed deeper. September 19th. September 12th. August 29th. Nothing after that. 6 weeks. 6 Tuesdays. She hasn't been in for 6 weeks, Sarah announced to a small gathering of staff during their afternoon break. The news rippled through the small staff room. I checked the log. The last entry for Eliza was August 29th. Mark, usually jovial, sobered immediately. 6 weeks? That's unprecedented. She was here every single Tuesday, like clockwork. Never missed a beat. And we still don't know her last name, do we? Offered Jessica, stirring her coffee. She always just signed in as Eliza. Sarah nodded, a fresh wave of concern washing over her. It's been bothering me. And Barnaby, he's been pacing relentlessly lately, especially on Tuesdays. Finally clicked. He misses her. The image of the old beagle's anxious shuffle in his run, his tail drooping, flashed in her mind. He always spent most of his time with her. The silence that followed was heavy with shared worry, each person mentally reviewing their last interactions with the quiet woman. A clue from the past. The fluorescent lights of the break room hummed, casting a pale glow on the scattered notes. Liam, the youngest staff member, tapped a pen against his chin. Still nothing on an Eliza in the police reports or hospital admissions. It's like she vanished. Maria, the intake coordinator, frowned. We've called every senior living facility within a 10-mile radius. No one has an Eliza matching her description who's been admitted recently. Sarah, usually quiet, paced a small circle. The beagle in Run 12's persistent whining had been an unbearable soundtrack to her afternoon. She pictured Mrs. Eliza's gentle smile, the way she always smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Wait, she said, stopping abruptly, a flicker of memory igniting. I remember one Tuesday, she was talking about needing to leave early. She said something about her shift at the senior center helping with bingo or something. The words tumbled out, gaining confidence with each syllable. She mentioned getting there before the afternoon rush. I just thought she meant her own personal errands, but she said, shift. A hush fell over the room. Liam's eyes widened. A senior center volunteer list. That's a lead we haven't pursued. Maria grabbed the phone directory. Which one, Sarah? Did she say? Sarah pressed her lips together, straining to recall. I think it started with an O. Oakwood, maybe? Yes, Oakwood Senior Center. She said they had good coffee. The urgency in her voice was clear. The image of the beagle's forlorn pacing solidified their resolve. This was their best, perhaps only, chance. Troubling news. The phone felt cool against Sarah's ear as she dialed the Oakwood Senior Center. A cheerful voice answered, "Oakwood Senior Center. How can I help you?" "Hi," Sarah began, her voice a little hesitant. "I'm calling about a volunteer. She usually visits the local animal shelter, and we haven't seen her in a while. We only know her first name, Eliza." "Eliza?" the woman repeated, a pause following. "Ah, yes, Mrs. Eliza Finch. She's a wonderful woman, volunteers with us too." Sarah felt a small surge of relief. "Is everything all right with her? We're a bit concerned." The cheerful tone dimmed slightly. "Oh dear. Mrs. Finch had a rather nasty fall about 6 weeks ago. She broke her hip. She's been in the hospital and is now recuperating at the Sunnybrook Rehabilitation Facility." Sarah's heart sank. "Oh no. Is she recovering well?" "She's making good progress, all things considered," the voice reassured her. "But it's been a tough adjustment, and I know she's missing her usual routines, especially her visits to the shelter." A new worry pricked at Sarah. "Does Sunnybrook allow visitors easily? And animals?" The woman sighed softly. "Visitors are fine, of course. But animals, I'm afraid they have a strict no-pets policy. It's quite disheartening for her, I'm sure." The news settled in Sarah's stomach like a cold stone. No pets. She pictured the old beagle, pacing restlessly in his run, his eyes scanning for the familiar, gentle woman. Plan for Barnaby. The hushed conversation reached Mr. Henderson's office, even with the door closed. Sarah's voice, usually so measured, carried a note of genuine concern as she relayed the update on Mrs. Eliza. "She's still at the rehab facility," Sarah explained to another volunteer, "and it sounds like she won't be home for a while." Mr. Henderson leaned back, the news settling heavily. He'd seen Barnaby just moments before, sprawled in his kennel, nose tucked into his paws, an almost palpable cloud of melancholy clinging to him. The old beagle hadn't eaten much that morning, his usual eagerness for breakfast entirely absent. It wasn't just a missed walk. It was a deep, sustained sorrow. Barnaby had pined for weeks, his once bright eyes now dull with an unspoken yearning. A spark ignited in Mr. Henderson's mind. Rules were there for a reason, yes, but sometimes compassion demanded a different path. He pushed away from his desk. "Sarah," he called, emerging into the main corridor. "Gather Barnaby's leash. We're going on an outing." Sarah looked at him, her brow furrowed in surprise. But then a slow smile spread across her face as understanding dawned. She found Barnaby curled tightly, but at the jingle of his leash, his head perked up, a flicker of interest in his tired gaze. Sarah spoke softly, stroking his velvety ears. "Come on, old boy. We have a very special visit to make." Barnaby pushed himself to his feet, a tentative wag stirring his tail. As Sarah fastened the leash, he looked up at her, a silent question in his liquid brown eyes. She simply offered a reassuring squeeze. This journey was for him, for Mrs. Eliza, a bridge built of hope and quiet affection. The reunion. The shelter van hummed, a gentle vibration beneath Barnaby's paws. He sat patiently, occasionally peering out the small window at the unfamiliar trees rushing past. Sarah, seated beside his travel crate, offered a reassuring pat. The air inside held a faint medicinal scent, different from the shelter, making his ears twitch. When the van finally slowed, turning onto a long, paved drive, a new wave of anticipation stirred within him. The automatic doors of the rehabilitation center hissed open, revealing a bright, airy lobby. Sarah unclipped his lead, a quiet word of encouragement her only instruction. Barnaby's nose twitched, sifting through the scents of antiseptic and faint florals. But beneath it all, a familiar, comforting presence beckoned. He ignored the curious glances, his eyes fixed on a figure in a wheelchair across the sunlit common room. He walked with purpose, his gait steady despite the 6 weeks of pacing. Mrs. Eliza sat by a window, her gaze distant, a half-finished crossword puzzle on a tray before her. She didn't notice him until he was right there, a warm, solid presence against her leg. Without a sound, Barnaby rested his chin on her knee, his soft fur a familiar comfort. A gasp escaped Mrs. Eliza's lips. Her eyes, clouded with a weariness Sarah hadn't seen before, widened with disbelief, then filled with a liquid warmth. She lowered both hands, trembling slightly, and cupped his head, burying her fingers in his scruff. "Barnaby?" she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Oh, my dear, sweet Barnaby." A tear traced a path down her cheek, but a smile, radiant and genuine, bloomed on her face. Forever home again. The crisp morning light filtered into Mr. Henderson's office, illuminating the stacks of paperwork on his desk. He held his phone to his ear, a determined furrow in his brow. "Yes, I understand the protocol," he said, his voice firm but patient. "However, this isn't a typical situation. Mrs. Finch is an institution here. And Barnaby, well, he's not just any dog." He paused, listening intently, occasionally nodding. "A medical foster, yes, that's exactly what I'm proposing. She's recovering from a fall, and the facility doesn't allow animals. But Barnaby's presence, I truly believe, would expedite her healing process." There was a longer silence as the person on the other end considered. Mr. Henderson leaned forward, a silent plea in his posture. Finally, he straightened, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Excellent. I appreciate your flexibility. We'll arrange all the necessary paperwork immediately." Later that afternoon, a specialized transport van, usually reserved for inter-shelter transfers, pulled up to the rehabilitation center. Barnaby, tail wagging a steady rhythm, was gently led inside. Mrs. Finch, seated in her usual armchair, looked up as he entered. Her face, still a little pale, bloomed with a joy that erased weeks of worry from her features. Barnaby trotted directly to her, nudging his head against her hand, a soft whine escaping him. "Oh, Barnaby," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, her fingers immediately seeking the familiar comfort of his fur. Mr. Henderson stood by, a quiet observer of the reunion, a deep sense of satisfaction warming him. "He'll be staying with you, Mrs. Finch," he explained, "as a medical foster. Until you're back on your feet and ready for your own home, he's here." A single tear traced a path down Mrs. Finch's cheek, but her smile was radiant. Barnaby, content, laid his head on her lap, his breathing a steady, comforting rhythm. A forever home, again, for both of them, even if only for a season, promised daily companionship and a bond unbreakable.